Joining us now to talk more on the FICA amendment bill, we are joined by David Lewis, Executive Director at Corruption Watch. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
We saw a very heated session in Parliament today. Is the President's concern about the invasion of privacy valid?
Not as far as I can see. I mean, there are grounds and other legislation for warrantless searches, and the searches, the right of the investigating agencies to do a warrantless search in this instance is quite tightly circumscribed and subject to certain conditions. And I mean, the vast majority of learned legal opinion has concluded that this is perfectly constitutional. So, it seems that there is another reason for wanting this bill to be reviewed, or this act to be reviewed, and it doesn't seem to be about warrantless searches.
And I want us to look at those reasons, but before that, let's backtrack a little bit. Sure. For someone who doesn't understand the bill as a whole, let alone this clause that's being disputed, why did this come about? What was the reason for the bill being necessary?
Well, it's necessary. The bill is necessary to comply with the standards of the Financial Action Task Force, which is an international standard for banking, and the controversial, the clauses here that have been controversial in the bill concern the additional scrutiny that has to be given to politically exposed persons, politically connected persons. I mean, this is a standard applied throughout the world. It has no particular sort of race discrimination. I mean, obviously, in a country like South Africa, we would expect that the vast majority of politically connected, we would hope that the vast majority of politically connected persons would be black. The opposite we used to call apartheid, actually. And so, it's not a race-based discrimination. In Britain, the majority will be white, and their associates and their family will be white, and here they will be black. And so this is an international standard that has to be adhered to. If the banks detect unusual transactions in an account, they have to report it to the Financial Intelligence Center. And if the Financial Intelligence Center has reason to believe that these movements are indeed not sufficiently understood or explained, and they think that it requires a criminal investigation, then they have to refer it to the policing, the law enforcement authorities. So I really don't know what the fuss is about here, unless there is a group of people who want to evade scrutiny.
And speaking of that, I mean, when we first started in the beginning, you said that the President's concern of invasion of privacy can't really be justified, and that there might be other reasons. What could those reasons be?
Well,
let's just put it out there.
What I've just said, the reasons can be that some people don't want unusual movements in their accounts scrutinized. You may recall the controversy around the deputy head of SARS, of South African Revenue Services, when a person earning a salary every month on a full-time job suddenly was putting large amounts of cash into his bank account. I mean, he may have an innocent explanation for it. He may have won the lotto or something, but that's an unexplained and a suspicious movement in his account. Of course it must be looked into. And, for the South African banking community, this is not just a matter of adhering to some sort of Western standard. This is about adhering to global banking standards. And if we want to lose our position as an important financial center and raise the cost of dealing with international banks, then we're heading down the right road here.
And speaking of that, I guess that would be a good way to bring in the issue of transparency, because that's important. If you want to retain your position as a top financial center, transparency would be key.
Yeah, you have to meet certain minimum standards, and those standards are incredibly important for detecting corruption. They're incredibly important for detecting terrorism financing. They're incredibly they're incredibly important for tackling a whole series of major crimes, from human trafficking to drug trafficking, and this is what they're for. They're not for, as Mr. Manya says, people who want to support the ruling party or people who get big contracts with government. Certainly, if it's a movement, it represents a movement in their account out of the ordinary, then they need to be looked into just as anybody else's, just as yours and mine do.
But it would be then investigated. Obviously, it's not like they just look at a movement.
No, it's not like somebody looks at it, some minor official looks at it and decides that you can't bank anymore or you're going to go to jail. I mean, it's just not like that at all. It's a regulatory requirement that is there to ease detection of grievous crimes potentially, but there may be good explanations for unusual movements, and then nothing further is done about it.
Perhaps to shift a little focus from today specifically and to look at the political environment in our country and the political climate as it stands and the effects of that on other sectors. I mean, we see how it affects the economy, for example, and we're seeing it in this way as well.
Yes. I mean, I think this, as I said, this will have a very substantial effect on the standing of our banking community in the international financial system. It will cause investors to think that South Africa is soft on corruption, that the South African government is soft on corruption, and all of that doesn't mean that nobody will invest in the country. It just means that they will factor this into the cost of doing business in South Africa, and so the cost of doing business in South Africa might start to become higher than the cost of business doing business elsewhere. It doesn't mean that international banks will refuse to deal with us, but they know that there will be greater risk in dealing with South African banks, because South African banks are not required to scrutinize their clients closely and scrutinize politically exposed persons particularly closely and report suspicious transactions. So they will charge more for dealing with South African banks. And all of this raises the cost of doing business in South Africa with all the knock-on effects that presupposes. So it's not been a great day.
And I'm actually glad that you mentioned investor perceptions, because we saw the South African delegation with the Deputy President going to the World Economic Forum in Davos last week. And they were saying, South Africa is ready for investment, we're friendly enough. How do such things impact us, or impact those sentiments rather, because it's almost contradictory, isn't it?
Yeah, well, very negatively. I mean, that's, all there is to say about it. This is something that other banks will be watching, that other governments will be watching, and investors will be watching. I mean, it's also not been a great day, it seems to me, for Parliament. I mean, this is, one forgets this is an act that has been passed. The one clause that the President thought may be unconstitutional, that he referred back, the chair of the committee was very insistent that this was the only thing that was going to be discussed. It's gone through Parliament, it's gone through public hearings, and is this going to happen every time an act of Parliament gets passed and it's passed to the President for signature? Some interest group thinks, we want a second bite of the cherry and we want to start this whole thing over again. It's the whole thing is a terrible precedent to set for the functioning of Parliament, which is beginning to show much greater independence and robustness, and that's all to the good, but this day has not set a great precedent.
Now, just to wrap up, David, what would the impact of further delays of signing this bill be?
Well,
and can we expect it to be signed? I
understand that we are coming up for a review under the FATF, and I think that there is a meeting. I understood from one of the submissions today that there is a meeting in a short while in which South Africa have to report back on this, because we've been found to be lagging in our scrutiny of politically exposed persons and in some other disclosures. And the consequences could be that our status in the FATF is downgraded, that the assessment that we get from the FATF is less than the standard that other banks would accept for dealing at the lowest possible cost with South African banks. So they are very serious.
David, thank you very much for joining us. We'll have to leave it there.
Thank you.
That was David Lewis from Corruption Watch speaking to us regarding the public hearings into the FICA amendment bill.